Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me this morning. Today, as you're well aware, we are going through a overview of foundation and more geared towards some educational topics for CPAs that have some clients on foundation, of course. Now, if you sat in on one or two of these, there's definitely going to be reoccurring topics, and honestly, based on feedback, which is more than welcome. We can adapt on these in the future for people that want to participate with, hey, now that we've done this, can we learn the next steps or maybe a little bit more deep for some more advanced things, right? Saying that, yeah, ask questions as we go. I'm going to start from some basic stuff and get into some a little bit more day-to-day practice for, like certain defaults, tips and tricks, that type of thing. But with that all in mind, let's hop in and make best use of the time. So here I am. That's me. Not the greatest photo alive, but yeah. So I'm in sales here at this point. I did a little over about 10 years in our support and training environment. So I spent half the time here and then half the time in the sales department and a few other things in between. But yeah, there's some background information. I've been around this for a while. Hopefully that adds a little credibility. Now here overall, I'm just going to spend a couple seconds on these slides and we're going to jump right in per se. And maybe not surprising, there's CPAs and professionals I'll talk to that maybe aren't aware of some things that we do. And obviously that is what it is. So here's just another, quick recap on here's the umbrella of products that we provide. The heart of where we started nearly 40 years ago, it's the job cost accounting, right? Construction accounting, construction payroll, AIA billings, change orders, all of that. Project management, right? And we've released a more modern environment and solution for project management, which we call Project HQ. That's anything from tracking daily logs and submittals, transmittals, contact management, meeting minutes, punch lists. For people that are trying to get more into bringing, per se, everything in one as much as they can. Mobile solutions. So we do have mobile products. If you think of the basics of just time entry in the field, quantities, equipment, that's an option for a lot of our clients that they utilize. Construction payroll service. So while our base system has a very good detailed payroll module, certified payroll, union payroll, multi-state, multi-rates, all the necessary things for a contractor. We also offer the ability for us to actually be their, paychecks or ADP, pay their taxes, pay their employees, do their W-2s, quarterly returns, and that is all in one, which is nice, right? So for those companies that get their time in the system, proof everything, essentially press a button and then our payroll service takes over for the rest, but they're done, right? Which is great. Their job costing's up to date. They can run their, certifieds, their GL's up to date. So it's not like a scenario where they'd have to maintain two separate solutions. So over recent years, we've brought a couple estimating tools under our wing, and we recently rolled out a safety product. So these are, the pretty view of that, right? Foundation software at the high umbrella here. We've got our two estimating solutions, Edge and McCormick. Edge focuses a lot on like roofing contractors. Is an example of a trade that would fit well with. McCormick is very strong on the electrical, mechanical side. Project HQ, that's our web-based PM platform. Safety HQ, you think of like toolbox talks, safety data sheets, correction follow-ups. Payroll for construction is our full payroll service, right? So, all right, so that's just a big awareness, not necessarily trying to give you a sales pitch on those things, just to let you know that, hey, these are things that we do. All right, so let's hop in. We'll go right into the platform and see what we're dealing with. Now, as most of you are aware, I'd say 95% of our clients over the past few years, it's cloud-based, right? So they're dialing in remote. I'm sure a lot of you are as well. The main menu, it's really just set up based on a user's security. As you probably assume, right? There's a security area in the system where we can define, who's allowed to see and do what. Maybe a project manager only sees their jobs. Maybe somebody can get into payroll but not see executives. So if you're ever in here and, maybe in situations where working with your clients where there's concerns about who can see what, just be aware that there's a whole area to manage security, and we're happy to assist with any of those settings. Now I'm going to start off with just some basic lay of the land, and I'll be brief with this. Base modules are up top, right? That's the classics. The middle group are the add-ons along with these other, products like our mobile app, for example. But notice they're all laid out the same way, right? And please bear with it. Some companies, again, or users, I'm sorry, that are on the call may be really familiar with things. Some might be new to it. Daily is your day-to-day, right? That's where I'm going to put in an AP invoice, right? Put in a journal entry, put in a time card. Maintenance is just maintaining the module. Adding or modifying a vendor or a customer or a job. Reports, that's what they are. They're the reports. Now, one thing I like to point out too is these shortcuts on the left. And so those are user specific. So this might say, Cheryl's links or Jose's or whoever, yours, right? And so each person can set up as many as they want. Real simple concept. You when you add a new one, right, you're naming it what you want. And then when you create that title, you can essentially just kind of drop and drag any menu item that you want in that shortcut group. And when these are set up with this little wrench, right, when you add a new one, you can say if it's a wizard. None of mine are, but that would mean like if I click on step A after I enter time cards, maybe it automatically pops up the next step in the process to kind of walk through a workflow. So those are pretty helpful, especially for new users to kind of create little shortcuts in groups, or for maybe somebody that's not in the system a lot, like an owner. All right, they log in, they don't have to get lost in the weeds here. They can just, kind of click into the main reports or features that are important to them. Now, if we talk about another quick, I think, helpful tip with like using the system more efficient on reports, whatever the report may be. I'm gonna honestly just jumping into the first one I see, the aging report for AP. Doesn't matter. It could be a job report, financial, etc. So if there's an area where you as a user wants a saved setting, a saved default, like, hey, I always want this ran by job then vendor, and and I want to show their address for some reason, you can go up to the report icon up top and say save defaults, right? So that way, every time you go in, it's your favorites versus another person who's going to run that report as well. So those are specific to each user. So report, and then you have your save defaults or clear or delete, okay? Just as a quick mention on that. Now, there's 2 or 3 really classic things that can be super important in how the system's feeling for you, right? Meaning making it effective. So add and modify any area. Let's take a job, for example. So I'm going to go to, well, I have a shortcut to it, but I'm going to go to job cost maintenance, and we're going to go to jobs. So, and there are shortcut icons or little guides that we can send, like a little piece of paper or PDF that says, hey, F2 toggles add and modify, right? I just know that. F4 is the drop-down menu. So those are things that we can send out and share. But the whole point here is adding is adding, modifying is modifying something that's already there. Now, over the years, we've made progress many years ago with, if I'm in the if I'm in the modify mode and I didn't catch it, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna put in a new job here. As I start to do it, it's like, hey, stop, basically telling me I'm a dummy. Don't do that. You're just wasting your time because you're in the modify mode, as opposed to going through setting up all the different fields, addresses, and then go, shoot, I can't even save it because I'm in modify. So add and modify, right? Notice there's a little lock there. If you prefer, hey, 90% of the time when I come into the screen, I want it to be in the modify mode, I can kind of lock that down versus having it in add mode, okay? Now, on that note, right, let's pull up random job number 1. Notice you have this delete button. That's really maybe not the best term. It's not deleting it out of the system. It's not getting rid of it permanently. It's hiding it in a sense, which is good. This job has history on it, so it's not I can't get rid of it. It's like, too bad, there's history behind it. But that can be really helpful if we just want to hide it, right? Maybe an employee that's fired. You don't want them in the drop-down menu anymore, right? So it's like, oh, cool, it's gone. I don't need to mess around. It's still there in history. It's just hidden, essentially. So if I need that back, now I know I just deleted one, so I can just hit it. Oh no, now it popped it in there, right? Because it defaults to the one that's not, but there it is. And it says it's deleted, record status deleted. I can always undelete. Okay, so it's not like it's permanently deleted if I want it to come back. Maybe you deleted an employee and then they come back to work later. Maybe I undelete them. I had them in history still, right? So I can undelete that. Now, before I do that though, another thing I wanted to point out, which coincides with this deleted, maybe I'm like, I don't remember the job number. How do I undelete it? Well, you can run a list, and that's important throughout the system. If I want a chart of accounts, right, or a list of vendors, customers, employees, you name it, we hit list. Now you can do, I had some default saved here apparently, because I think the default is profile list or whatnot. But I can say, yeah, show deleted, no, yes, or only. Only, show me my deleted only. So there's one of them that I had deleted. And right, so you can do show deleted, yes, no. It's going to show everything that's falling in that structure. Now, oh, active. I was like, why is there nothing there that I anticipated? So there we go, right? So that's how we're doing that there with yes, no only, but that's what a list is, right? And so that's something that I do on any area where I'm like, hey, I want a list of employees, list of jobs, list of customers. You go into that area in maintenance and you list. Now you also use that list function on day-to-day activity. Let's say we're putting in an AP invoice. Nothing too exciting. I'm going to go to, again, daily. That's our day-to-day. And we're going to put an invoice in. Now, I'm going to make this super quick because you're not really probably concerned about putting in an invoice. Now I'm going to pick a vendor. And one thing I wasn't going to bring up, but I will, defaults. Really important. Now, for a lot of companies, it's like they're already past that point probably. It depends, right? When I used to do training, sometimes the CPA was heavily involved or almost mutually involved with me during that process, getting their company up and running. Some are kind of in the background. Some I never talked to for a while, and I'd send them emails just, hey, here's what I did. But the point is, like that vendor, there's defaults on that vendor for their terms, right? Maybe the potential discounts. That's a supplier, so it's going to default to hopefully my material GL account, for example. Well, let's just put in $1,000 invoice. It's pulling in my material cost class. Again, that's a default for that vendor. So it's like saving me time from not having to type them in every time. And those defaults are all over the place. Payroll's got a million of them that assist with that. Now I'm going to save this. Now when I hit OK, that invoice is saved. It's not posted. It's not in general ledger. It's not in job costing. It's not in AP history. Although companies can run an aging report in AP and say, show unposted invoices. They can run job reports and include those invoices that are entered that are not posted yet if they prefer. Maybe if they're routing them for approval, which is another feature we have. But going back to the topic at hand, list, right? So I've entered invoices, whether I put in one or 50 of them as an AP entry person. If I hit list, I can list and post all those invoices. That's the function that's committing it to our system. That's pushing it into officially AP history, GL history, and then job cost history obviously for the invoices that have jobs. Now I can filter that out, right? If I just wanted to post certain ones for some reason, like the one I just entered, great, I can do that, right? So again, I'm going to post it. Now it shows it's posted. I can't hit the button again because it's already done. And it just kind of shows us what it did, flows it through and I could have saw that information, of course, before I posted it. So the list is there to go, all right, does this look good before I actually commit it to the system, which you obviously can do corrections later if you mess something up or if the client did, right? So listing and then the posting functionality. Now there is a couple options with that whole posting concept, say for both AP and AR. And I'm going to spend more time in this control file in a little bit, but I want to make note, I don't know that I'd recommend it per se, but that's not my call. What people, especially a lot of companies convert from QuickBooks, right? And so they're like, hey, why do I have to list and post? It's like, well, don't you want to look at it? Like look at the list and make sure it looks good. But if they're like, no, Garrett, I don't care. Okay, so you can say, do I want it to auto post in AP? And AR has got the same thing. It's like, prompt me, right? Like as if I close out of the AP module, maybe yell, hey, do you want to post? You didn't post things. You want to do that now? Yes. Or just always do it. Like just, I don't care. Just anything I entered for AP invoices, when I close out, post it for me. Or remind me, just like, hey, just as an FYI, you didn't post what you keyed in. You just as if you knew that or not, right? So there's various settings like that where we're not trying to be, we don't want to be QuickBooks, obviously, because that wouldn't be good. Well, besides they're loaded. But at the same token, we want to make sure we're not making it too hard, right? Too big of a leap. And not that it's perfect, but we're trying to make that magic point where, you know, there's some familiarity with some things, but behind the scenes, you're keeping the integrity of everything in place from an accounting standpoint. Now, and I'm bouncing a bit. So when I went into that job and I deleted it, right, and I can undelete. Now there's an area where I can purge data. Now, obviously, that's not enabled for basically any user but the admin person, and even then, it's like, hey, be careful, right? Like, don't go anything crazy. Truth is, like, if I wanted to go delete a job, I shouldn't say delete, purge. That's the term to really wipe it out of the system. Like, it's gone, right? I can't though. Notice it's kind of protecting me. It's like, nope, you can't get rid of it. Oh, here's one. I can get rid of that job because there's nothing done to it. I never put any AP invoices in. I never put in a time card. I didn't do anything. It's not on a PO. So I could purge it. I can get rid of it. But otherwise, it's like, nope, you can't get rid of it because I can't even click the row to highlight it because it's like it's in an AP invoice. It's been in GL. It's like you can't just get rid of it. So we do protect that in those cases, though, to make sure that, you know, you can't get rid of something that you shouldn't. But the point initially is, yeah, in those situations where it's like, oh, crap, I put this in, I need to get rid of it because we already had that job or something. Well, we can get rid of it since there's no history, right? So I talked about posting, listing and posting, setting up your shortcuts over here. And again, just as a reminder, if anybody needs like the keyboard shortcuts, you know, F2 to modify and add, F4 for the drop downs. If I'm in a screen, I can hit F5 to do a list as opposed to, I mean, it's just saving you clicking the mouse, but it's you know, I hit F5, right? It takes me to the list. So those shortcuts can be pretty helpful. All right, let's go back to those control files, and we're going to talk about those a couple quick things that probably hit home for you all. So if I go to controls, I guess AP is as good as AR or GL for this example, but you know, control dates, something many of you or maybe all of you are already aware of. Mine are wide open, right? Because I don't care. I'm doing demonstrations. I'm posting garbage all over the place. But a lot of our clients, maybe right now they'd have, you know, November 1st of 2022 to, you know, 12/31 of 2022. Or maybe they're done with November because they're, yeah, I don't know if that's magical, right? Maybe they just have November open, or maybe they have October through the end of December open. Whatever date range you or their controller or CFO feels should be open, that's the dates that you would have there. So if I went in here, say this was 12/1 to, you know, 12/31/22, or yeah, oops, yep. And it's like if I try to go put an invoice into AP because I'm in the AP control file into November, it's going to say you can't. You can't do that. It's outside your date range. I could just have it as a warning. You know, if it's a smaller company, it's a one person running the whole show, right? It's like, hey, just remind me if I, you know, as you creep into 2023, if they accidentally use 2022 because they're just used to it, at least warn them. Otherwise, prevent is like you can't do it, and then they'd have to go ask, you know, the admin person if, you know, if they need to reopen these date ranges. So it's not a hard close, right? Like when I do this, it's not like I can't reopen a date range later on. And with those control dates, you know, it doesn't mean I can't run reports for any historical detail from 20 years ago. But that's something I want to bring up, control dates, because that's really important as a year's wrapped up or a quarter or a month to make sure that we're not having users put data to a time period that's not applicable. Now, on that note, from an audit trail, every module has reports, right? Some are really simple, some are detailed. Some are meant to be more research oriented, right? Not just like, hey, what's outstanding in AR? But, you know, there's and I'm in AR reports, right? There's a full invoice report, invoice history. So you start to learn, and just with our help and otherwise, just using it, what reports fit you best for the data that you're trying to find, right? I'm just going to put in a really old big date range here. What do I want to see? Do I want to see, every invoice? And, okay, here's invoices, the checks that I put against those invoices. Okay, somebody asked a question. I just saw the thing pop up. I'll get back to that one with credit cards. I'll make a little note and I'll reread your question. And if I don't get to a question today, I will make sure I follow up with you. And anybody feel free to hit me up anytime with questions. Right, adjustments or reversals that we've done to invoices. So just from an auditing standpoint, right? I mean, the big ones a lot of people utilize, GL reports. There's two classic ones that I always bring up. Your history detail, it's like the mothership of GL history, and the post log, right? So with history detail, and as you're aware, there's so many criteria options for these reports. And I'm putting old dates because I'm using my old database that I use, my old company for my support days. Do I want to pick things that just came from AP? Do I want to pick transactions that just came from, payroll or something? Or no, just show me everything. Or do I want to run everything that ever went to this one checking account? I don't know. But the whole point is obviously is I can get an audit trail of anything that we've done to those dates based on what my criteria is selected. Right? Do I want to run it just for certain jobs or just certain divisions or whatnot? So it gives us that visibility here, of all that data. One cool trick within the post log, and actually we might have added it to the history detail, which sadly I didn't even realize until just now because I saw a little flag for it. Post date. This is really nice because I can say, what did I actually do today, right? Regardless of what date I posted to. Physically, what did I do today? Right now, I think I posted an invoice, right, in AP. So I could put a date range that's completely huge. It doesn't matter. It's saying what you did today physically. So say you prepared financials for November. I don't know, and the user forgot to block users from posting data back to November. And we're like, oh shoot, I forgot I never closed those dates. I could say, what did I physically do in December today that I maybe posted to last month or last year, right? It just brings up what we've done in a certain time period, and no matter what date we actually posted it to. Speaking of dates, if I go to AP or AR, I've been picking on AP. I don't believe I noted this on invoices, right? AP and AR. You've got invoice date, transaction date, and we're on the 8th, so this might be a good example. Let's just say, hey, the AP invoice came in from a vendor. It was dated the 28th, but I want it to go into December. That maybe I'm done with November, or hey, I just want it to go in December. This is the day that is updating general ledger and job costing, right? And that's the day that we're making sure is within that control date range, okay? So that's a big picture. Now, while I'm here, one of the questions, and I won't out the person, you probably don't care, but yeah, credit card transactions, how do you enter those? So I'm go right back to the main menu. This is probably good for everybody. On AP Daily, enter invoices. So there you can say prepaid credit card, right? And funny enough, I just did a demonstration this week with a company that's like, well, can I just put, Amex as the vendor, right, or whatever, leave that regular and then just do it? I'm like, yeah, but then you lose the history that you bought stuff from Home Depot or ABC Supply Company. Like, so that's why we have this where you say prepaid credit card, because technically it's already paid. You didn't pay Visa or Amex yet, but the Home Depot is paid for, right? Or Wolf Construction Supply or whatever, right? So it's prepaid, and then it gives you the opportunity here. This field for account opened up when I said prepaid credit card, and we would be selecting our Amex, our Visa, or whatever. And so we can still job cost if it's job related, right? That invoice, just like you would a generic invoice, but it's not showing on our aging report because we're labeling it as prepaid. It's done. It's off the aging report. However, now because we put our credit card account there that we, or whatever credit card we used, it's now able to be reconciled in our standard bank account rec feature within the general ledger, which we'll go to here in a bit. So under AP daily on the invoice screen, this is one way. And then more common design way to do it is it's a prepaid credit card. And then again, as I selected that, notice regular AP invoice has no field there for the account. An account maybe is misleading. It's really just picking credit card. You have a savings account, checking account, credit card, and probably multiple, right? Because you want to have one listed for each credit card that would be reconciled. So that's one way to do that. Somebody also threw a question out that's probably helpful for a lot of people. Find my questions again because I lost them. It was with cash-based financials. You can do that. We have I think basically somebody on our side created some cash-based options for financials. Obviously, it's an accrual-based software, right? We're not changing that at any time that I know of. Right, which we wouldn't. That's what it is. That's what we need. But you can produce cash financials. That's what I'm going to mention on that. You can reach out to me or support and give you some more information on it. But basically, it's the same way that everything acts, right? Like you can still go run an AP and AR aging report. Those transactions are still sitting there like the same, but you can run a cash-based financial. So I'll say that, and there's a couple options for that we can provide you for that. Let's get into under GL daily. Very exciting journal entries, right? Now, obviously, you guys can do a journal entry, right? Nothing crazy. Now, you may notice, and I don't know that mine are the same as companies are out of the gate. There's GL, I've got reoccurring, I've got opening. In a nutshell, GL and GJ are like the two common ones. And GL is just your standard general ledger journal entry, right? So you got your accounts, debits, credits, date, right? Now you can import a Excel file. I used to import from Excel with my budgets when I used to run our support staff when it was small, and they trusted me to do that. So I'd compare those in Excel and just import them. But you can import budget journals, which I'll talk about, or regular GL journals, of course. Now, I wasn't going to do this right now, but it's not anything crazy. You can hit on any screen, like if you're like, what is that field? Or what does that do? You can hit help current item or shift F1, just as again, whether you care or not, with the shortcuts. It's like, hey, here's every field on that screen. So we know what it means, right? Now, the reason I did that, somebody asked me actually yesterday for import specs on, it was journal entries. It was this actually. So they said, what's that file spec? I was like, I have no idea. So I went to the help area, and that's why it's highlighted. I already knew I clicked on it the other day. Importing journal entries. It's like, here's the specs. Here's what the file layout is for that. It's really helpful. There's a lot, for when I was early on in my career here 20 years ago, somebody's like, I need to set up weighted average overtime or blended rates in payroll. And I was like, what is that? I literally went to help, typed it in under search, and we set it up together, and it worked. I was like, awesome. Now, we trained people much more thorough than 20 some years ago, but it's a really nice feature because it's like, oh, cool, it walks you through these steps. Now, there's also in the help menu, and I know I went on a sidebar here, but under help, I did search, just to type something in when I said weighted average. Current item is what I was referencing when I just, any screen you're on, go to help current item, and it pulls up information on every field there. You do have option to check for updates, user guide. Now, if you want to spend about 6 years reading it, have fun, but it's 2,700 pages of wealth of knowledge, right? So it's actually pretty interactive though too, to a point. Like if I'm like, oh, I need to go into learn about equipment, just click on it. It jumps you to it. I can obviously you can print these out, but it's really detailed. It's really well done. But it's a lot there, right? And again, you can click on things. It jumps you around. So it's more of a reference that yeah, there's content within the system to help with things. Going back to journal entries. So same thing. You have to list and post them. One of the parts really I wanted to mention is under maintenance GL maintenance journals, right? Like you can specify and create new ones if you need one to say like there's an accrual journal. When I use that one, it's saying when I do the entry, what's the reversal date, right? I'm going to put it in on 12/8 today, and it's going to prompt me to fill in a reversal date for that to back out automatically on 12/31 or something. Reoccurring, right? So the journal type, I guess I could have done that in a short and sweet way. Is it just a standard generic journal entry, which we already have the GL one already there by default? Is there one that's reoccurring? And is it reoccurring with amounts or accounts? Okay, and then accruals, the auto reversing. Budget, I believe that's already in the CAN settings for just right off the bat. There's a budget option. So as opposed to doing just a generic journal entry in the classic sense, I can enter a budget. It's the same looking screen, but notice here, the only one that shows up is the one that I've labeled as a budget type journal. So it's the same process. I'm still doing a journal entry, but it's going into this budget history so I can see budget versus actual on financials. And there's faster ways to do this with importing from Excel, or I can say, hey, we're gonna put this as 12 months and maybe I'm gonna do one account for the whole year. I'm gonna average, and this, I don't know what's practical with this. We have a really, classic distribution of income every month or something, right? Which is obviously not the case, but I think it'll auto populate rows. Oh, it needs a job. I told that to my system, which is whatever. Ignore that, which you would, right? And that's why a lot of people have like dummy jobs for things like that. So, it kind of automates it a little bit. I can, just shortcuts in a sense, right? So, but the budget journal is important. I just wanted people to be aware there's reoccurring accounts, reoccurring amounts, auto reversing journals as well. Under GL, I noted when the credit card question came up that you could reconcile those. Just as a brief reference from under daily in GL, that's kind of your day-to-day there. You're doing journal entries and reconciliations, right? So the reconciliation feature, you're picking any account that's labeled as checking, savings, or credit card when that account was defined. And I can edit it afterwards, of course, but I'm not going to spend much time on a reconciliation. You understand what's happening there. Although there's some nice features on here that we've added over the years, right? Maybe I can't find a check or a transaction. I can hit search and search by date, amount, check number, description. You can clear ranges of checks and deposits, right? If you're like, hey, I know checks 100 through 200 are clear, great. You can also create journal entries on the fly. Oh wait, there's a bank fee that we needed. Well, I can do that quickly here on the fly without like leaving where I'm at, which you could, right? You could save any progress and come back later. But some subtle shortcuts on that. You can technically import as well. So some people dump out of it from their bank. They'll export that data, and then it can be imported in to help auto reconcile anything that matches, the date, the check number, the amount. Those like fields would be matched. And it would auto reconcile in those cases. Year-end close. Keep in mind, as I mentioned this, the control dates, right? So when we close, we probably would then want to go block 2022. So let's just pretend we're going to close this year, because again, I don't care. So we'll put in this year, and for the accounts to close, I'm sure there's a situation where people need to use multiple fields here. I don't know what they are though. So we're gonna just, maybe there's some random account that you didn't want to close between your income and expenses. So I'm just gonna pick my first, and these are all play accounts, right? But I'm closing, from income through my first income account to my last expense account. We're going to close to our wonderful retained earnings, wherever that is, or I'll pick a random account if I don't see it soon. But now it'll bother me if I don't. There we go. So, I didn't do the close here. So my dummy company. So when you run it, the point is you hit post and it's honestly just closing it all out. What's really interesting and nice is it's closing it kind of to a fake time period between 12/31 and 1/1. And the reason is, like, when I run an income statement on 1/1, it's all closed, right? It's gone. Like, besides the activity we did on January 1st, for our income expenses. But I can still go run a financial through 12/31/2022, and that data is still there, right? So it's like it's just wiping it out on this fake time period between 12/31 and 1/1. Point here is, put in, you can just use one row if that makes sense to you, which most people would. Income through expenses, retained earnings, close it. Now, then you'd be guiding your client, or they would be doing this on their own too, to go into the say control files for GL and AP and AR and say, hey, no longer can we go back to the prior year, ideally, right? Now, if something happened where, I forgot to do these journal entries, we did the close, somebody can reopen those control dates, put a journal entry into that prior year, redo the close, right? So, and again, if you need assistance with that, obviously just reach out. Although year end, first, say, well, honestly, now through the first few weeks of January, it's a whole lot of calls come in. I mean, I'm talking the call volume goes up 4 to 5 times, which we've seen such a spur in that right now too. So just off topic, right? We're aware the support times have been slower right now for us, much slower than in history. And we've got a lot of people hired. We just had a really, really good past couple of years, and that's a nice thing, right? And it's like it takes time to get people up and running on the support side of things. So we want you guys to make sure you're taking care of when your clients are. So feel free to reach out directly too on something if I can help automate something or expedite it. So talk about audit reports, closing. Let me quick here. The report writer. Now I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but actually going back to like this, somebody asked about cash financials. I had made a couple. There's probably some slight downside to it, but I actually made some of those back in the day just through here to our financial report writer. But if I go to Genie's and data, custom job reports. Remember we were running those lists earlier when I was deleting or undeleting jobs, right? You can make custom job list, employee list, custom financials. So we preload standard financials, which I'll talk about that. If you wanted to make a new report with or without our help, I mean, it's like, say, an income statement. It's like, what do we call the revenue section? Do we call it revenue? Do we call it income? Do we call it sales? Do we call it income and sales? I don't know. And then what falls underneath it? Well, my income accounts, right? So I would go, all right, now again, the first time somebody makes one, it might take some time. Now the preloaded ones are there already. Not that you have to do this, but so I'm just grabbing my one account, making sure it's a credit because it's an income account, and then I pull over the next one, and then I would subtotal those, right? The subtotal totals the greens, the purple total totals the subtotals. So I could group in multiple, I could say from this to this and have them kind of all smushed into one fat number. And then on the financial, if I click that fat total income, it's going to expand out with each individual account. So even there's like tips and tricks with that. Now, that being said, I'm going to cheat and I'm going to open one that's already been made. It's probably some random sample one that I have. But again, I called it income. I threw in some income accounts, not all of them because I didn't, play purpose here. Subtotaled it, then I went to my expenses, subtotaled those. I've got my grand total net profit and all that. And so this screen, so again, I could say, hey, keep that all the same, but maybe I want to spin off another variation from that one we already created. Maybe I don't want it to show this year, prior year, and a variance on this one. I'll keep the original the way it is, but on this one, I want to do monthly, right? Current month, I want to do prior month, or I don't know, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. Now on the left there, I have year-to-date, month, quarter, period. Then the balance sheet would use balance, this year, prior year, all that. percentage, maybe like percentage of sales, formulas, maybe I want to do a variance of some sort. Notice then you have the repeating of those, but they're budgeted, right? Maybe budget month. So maybe I want to do the month and then pull over the budget month, or the year-to-date budget year-to-date with a variance. So, again, you can get pretty, I guess, specific in what we're trying to achieve here. Now, you can name it whatever you want, right? I'll do monthly or something. And I'm not making this look pretty. I mean, I could go through and format the options here, and like, does it show double lines? Does it show A, B, or C? What shows on this field here? I can make the column headings, make the dates as I run it, but I'll just call it income statement 2 or something. So I keep the original, now I have another variation of it. So if I go to GL reports and I go to Data Genie, okay, everything else is preloaded. Balance sheet, income statement, overhead, history. Anything I make in that report writer for GL reports is under the Genie reports tool. So these are just a few of them that I made up. So here's the monthly one I just made, some random date range that I saved. And I could have, the actual months up top, of course. But just give me an idea. It's like I don't have to recreate it from scratch potentially. I can just take one that's there and spin off of it to not recreate the wheel. Drill downs, right, as I click on a column, it's going to take me down to where that number came from, gives you some background on that. Now, you probably noticed this wasn't on my list to talk about, but I just happened to stare at it. We have these saved, really it's just exporting it, right? PDF, Word, Excel. I'd recommend the CSV option 99% of the time, well, maybe somewhere close, versus the Excel. This is more of the classic what you see is what you get. Where, sometimes there's like formulas or something like that behind the scenes that'll show up if you just use the standard Excel dump, where the CSV one's just like, nope, you're getting what you see and it's pulling it out of the system. So, and you can go really advanced with, it's an open SQL database behind the scenes, and I apologize, I'm kind of bouncing around, but I can go in and say, hey, I can get data from the back end of Foundation. And we do classes on that type of thing. I'm sure a lot of you or some of you are familiar with like Scott Kern or Ryan Chaplinsky or Brian Kansian from at the time when he was doing that role, but like real custom reporting and pulling data from the back end through a query. So, even when I'm showing the software to potential clients, I'm mentioning the report writer, the form designer, but they're not limited to it. But the reality is not everybody's super advanced, which is where these drop and drag report writing tools are hopefully giving people the crux of what they need. I want to go into GL accounts for just a quick second. And there's a couple of things I didn't even anticipate going in here right now. I probably should have, but when one of the people, and thank you, that asked about their credit cards, and I had noted, hey, as long as the account is labeled as checking, savings, or credit card, that's going to pop up on the reconciliation feature. So like that's where we're doing that. But there's a few other fields here that are helpful. Like if I go into just going to scroll down, I don't know, find a field FICA, oh, that was FICA shop. How about fielding? Real simple, right? For payroll. Notice it required job costing. This is really important. So, if I had that same, like say I had a material expense account, let's do that, which I think I have one that's called supplies or material, right here, supplies. If this said do not allow, well, that's not any good, right? If the person's putting in an AP invoice and they put it to supplies or material, it wouldn't let them put a job in. Now, we want that to set that way for like our balance sheet accounts, but for our direct expenses, it's like we want to force it. Or if they just forgot to put a job, it's like, sorry, you can't do that. You can't save this transaction with that GL account until you put a job in it for probably cost code, because it needs it. We want to make sure it's properly, hitting the general ledger and going to job costing when it should. So that's really important that that's set up properly. And then like here, like where is this going to go on the standard financials? Is this is it an income account? Is it a direct expense? There is overhead allocation in the system. I'm thinking of that here too. There's most of you are probably aware, like when payroll runs, it's already feeding job costing with the actual payroll burden, right? FICA, FUTA, SUTA, workers' comp, fringes, general liability insurance, all that's great. Now, there's two most common ways that people would allocate their indirect expenses to their jobs. One is through, I'll just start with the GL overhead allocation method. So in general ledger reports, there's a report called overhead allocation. Now, mine's not set up perfect or whatever, but the idea is you put in a date range, maybe the current month or whatever, and you could run it for all your jobs ideally. And this post button becomes available when I actually put in a date range. And what it's going to do, it's going to allocate the overhead to the actual jobs that had activity during that time period, during that month, for example. Now, is this a perfect science? No. But the way that we know what the overhead is based on those general ledger accounts. So when we set up the GL accounts, we can tag an account as an overhead account. And so that's how we know any of the, so the way that the system works is maybe for that month, for say November, if we ran this for November, it would say, here's all the overhead in these accounts labeled overhead. So now we know the total overhead dollars that we can distribute and allocate to actual jobs. So each job gets their appropriate percentage of the total overhead. So if one job was huge that month and it was 60% of the total cost, it's going to get 60% of that overhead. And it's going to automatically do that through this allocation feature. Now, another way some people bring it up when I used to do training in that is they'll say, well, we've got a lot of history. You know, we've been around for many years. We know that in addition to the payroll burden that's already happening, we want to tack on another 25% to compensate for our overhead. We're pretty sure that that's a consistent number. Okay. So we can set up what we call extra burden in these control files, right? Going back to control files, which are, again, an area not everybody should have access to. But under burdens, we can set up extra burden. I can call it whatever I want. Overhead, you know, it can create as many different types as I need with different calculations. So I might say, hey, just across the board, it's 25% of wages. So as payroll's processing, we're going to post to the jobs an additional 25% for overhead. Or, and you could say, is it a percentage? Mine is yes. Otherwise, you could say, no, it's an hour. Maybe it's $2 an hour. I don't know, right? And so you specify if it's hourly or not. And then if it's, you know, that way it's either a rate or percentage, of course. Now, some people might say, well, I know the category is going to be overhead, but maybe it depends on the person, right? Or the department that they're in. If they're in the shop or the office or field, maybe on the department record, we have a different percentage defined. And so it's a sequence. It goes, well, let's look there first. Maybe it's like this one or two people have a high overhead rate. So on the employee record, you'd see this extra burden tab turn on and you'd say, well, Joe has a 30% overhead and Sarah has a 40% overhead. Everybody else is just going to be driven by the department. So for the people that had no overhead on the employee record noted, it would skip it because it wasn't there and go find it on the department. So that's how those sequences work, where it goes from left to right until it finds it and then uses it. Speaking of departments, it looks like there's other questions, so I'll jump to those. Under payroll maintenance, it's kind of a random one I'm bringing up that's really important for how things affect the GL. Payroll is a pretty tricky area for a lot of companies, right? With all the union stuff for some, certified payroll, multi-states, it's just a lot going on. Even outside of that, we think of like something easy like workers' comp, right? So I'm going back from the main menu, payroll maintenance, I'm going to workers' comp. So like for any company we set up, we're in here, we're setting up workers' comp, we're setting up all our burdens. So I might say, so there I go, I'm in ad mode, right? It's saying, hey, dummy, you already have Ohio, which I just forgot to go to modify. So notice here, it's like I have one GL expense. And this is my direct expense account. Well, not everybody would go there, right? I'm still leaving it the way it is here. That's the default because that's what I decided. But on my department, and I'm right back at payroll maintenance, right? I was in workers' comp, I'm going to departments. And workers' comp is just one of the things that this applies to. If I pull up office, well, my workers' comp expense should be something different, right? It should be my office workers' comp expense account, not the field. So it always looks at, if I find it or not quickly, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. I'm just gonna go ahead and pick something generic. But you know, the point is, whatever I choose for the GL account expense accounts here, on a department, it's going to use those first before it goes and uses the default one from the workers' comp setup, from our SUTA setup, right? So even earning codes, it's like, well, maybe on straight time, when I set up the straight time or regular wage earn code, I had a default field wages, right? Well, that depends. If I use straight time for an office person, maybe that's going to office wages. So my department is really important in how that information and data hits the GL to go to the right spot in the GL, right? So those departments are set up and they're assigned to an employee. It's not saying a person can't, maybe it's a shop worker that sometimes is out in the field. On a time card, they could switch the department that they're in on the fly, different from their default, and that's going to, of course, trigger certain things like how that data is going to flow to the GL. Maybe that changes the taxes that are going to calculate. So departments are pretty important in how that works. I'm going to pause here for 2 seconds. There's a handful of questions. So I'll try to get back to some people on some of these here. On a few that are a little specific, which nothing bad, right? But just ones that'll probably take a little more discussion. Now, I noted a few minutes ago, like on getting help, right? User guide. We do also have, guys, on the client area of our website there, and you need your clients, right? They give you their credentials or whatever, nothing scary. There's content there too, like videos and how to and that. We do have CPA specific, like today, right? We're on a CPA specific webinar, but we also have a CPA conference, typically every year. And we've historically done that at our home office here outside of Cleveland, beautiful Cleveland, and it's really well done. It's a few days here where you earn CPE credits, and this isn't necessarily a pitch for that. Well, yeah, it is. But it's helpful, right? So you earn CPE credits. Generally, Scott Kern, who's one of our senior consultants, handles that. Probably one of the smartest people I know from that side of things. And yeah, he goes through on all the big spoken, construction accounting and how things work, and not just our system, but custom reports, and very advanced in that manner. The dinner, and it's good, right? It's not, I don't think it's too boring or anything, and it's good content. It's something that you can utilize and earn those CPE credits as well. Actually, on our website, I'll use my little shortcut. So it actually just took me right to the client portal, which made sense. So you need a client, credentials to log in and to have that content. But just alone on foundationsoft.com, there's a CPA firm button, right? And I'm sure a lot of you are aware of this, but you absolutely can become part of our on our little CPA directory, right? So join it. And for companies, right, for a contractor, I still talk to a lot of companies that they use random CPA, which is great, right? Keep one that's working for you, that's been well, and you have a good relationship with. But like construction specific ones, or companies that have CPA firms that maybe have a little background on us, trust me, we don't like you. We would never say to a professional or a CPA firm, hey, just recommend Foundation. That honestly wouldn't make sense, right? It's like you come across companies, and I mean, if you only do, awesome, right? But a lot of times our CPA firms will say, hey, we recommended them take a look at you, or Viewpoint or something. It's like, awesome, great, that's fair to everybody. Same thing, right? We'll say, hey, here's a couple CPA firms in that area that we're familiar with. Check them both out, see which one fits you guys best. Same approach. But there's some good resources here, right? With learning resources, case studies. So I mean, as you probably imagine, the website has a lot of good content for both you and clients, right? But the help menu, just keep that in your back pocket with the current item, the user's guide, the search option, of course, and then support in general too. I scanned through my list. Now there's a million things I could talk about, right, that I probably did not. There is this module which jumps right out at you, right? CPA audit review. Now anymore, I mean, I tend to think a lot of you, right, would just use your own shortcuts on the left. where you just kind of create your own little favorites. But this was set up really just from feedback from professionals in, CPA firms that we've worked with over the years. That was like, hey, if I didn't know your software and I logged in to help my client, kind of group together some of these key items, 941s, overhead allocation reports, WIP reports, billing backlogs, you see them, right? Adjustments, like create a journal entry, you know what I mean? Just contact information, right? So just basic things. You go, all right, here's how I can get help from Foundation, which, now you can just, set log a call at the top of the screen, right? Which would push a call into our support queue for assistance. Now, for those that weren't aware, just kind of reminder with the payroll service, because this does come up quite a bit, where people are like, hey, so who do you use? It's like, it's us. And I'm thinking of things for like ease of use. A lot of CPAs I talk to like heavily push our payroll service, and not for their benefit, but, well, maybe because they're like, hey, let Foundation take care of the the headache of paying taxes, or if somebody's getting into a lot of different states or locals and they're not used to it. But I always want to emphasize, for people that are on our payroll service, not much different on their side. I mean, they still get their time collected, they proof their payroll, they run these pre-check reports, any one of the 20 or so pre-check reports. But once they've scanned everything through and they've like, all right, everything looks good, they'd have a button that they'd press that says process payroll. But that gets shot over to our payroll service here. The client would receive an email saying, hey, we've got your payroll, just as a comfort level, and FYI, we got it. But like once it's done processing on our end, they're done. Their GL's fed properly, their job cost is up to date, their labor, their burden, their hours. It's the same end result, except we're paying their taxes, we did their checks and direct deposits, we're doing their W-2s, quarterly returns, but they can immediately go run their certifieds, workers' comp, minority compliance. Again, that's all there just the same. It's just we're doing their tax filings and they're paying their employees and all of that. There's also an environment for close out of that where employees can see pay stubs too. E-access just popped into my head thinking about the payroll service, right? So this is where employees, each employee, it's unlimited employee use, but they would open up their smartphone, tablet, laptop, home computer, whatever, and they can log in and see their recent pay stubs, past pay stubs, PTO balance or history, what they've accrued and used. So just giving them that digital approach to some of that payroll data. Now, how much I want to throw out there for this, we are rolling out a more feature-rich HR solution early next year, onboarding, right? And there's some other cool features with that that's going to be rolling out to help companies. It's in the same token of like, hey, we developed full project management for companies where they don't want to use another third-party product for it. That's why we rolled out, created a payroll service 15 plus years ago, probably closer to 20. We roll out this HR tool for people that have more advanced features for that are needed. So we have our full project management side of things, if you weren't aware. And it's all talking at the same back end, right? Jobs are here, they're there in Foundation. If I put a change order in here, it's in Foundation. The value to this is it allows for operations people like project managers to not take up a user seat in the core application and have access to their job reporting here, entering in change orders, purchase orders, right? Submittals, RFIs, daily logs, contact information, emails are saved here for job. So it's a kind of a separate platform for the project management side, but they're joined at the hip where they should be. On the same token, we rolled out, as I mentioned, Safety HQ, which is our safety platform. It gives people notifications of things they need to do for compliance or just classes. There's forms that are available, safety data sheets. Again, classic toolbox talks where it can send out videos to employees for certifications and education for lessons and track what's been completed, corrective actions, right? So there's a lot in here, right? That's available for helping with just OSHA and making sure that things are on the up and up from a safety standpoint. So that's another product that we're happy that we deployed. Oh, use, and I'm gonna have to jump up. Actual usage in here though, I just thought of something when I brought up the HR stuff. A lot of companies create user-defined fields on employee records for like certifications, drug tested, yes or no. So if you want to create a custom field, whether it's on jobs, employees, etc., under system where we went, there's security, who can do and see what, controls, right? We talked about setting up specific defaults and control dates. Right under that, there's other, and that's we can create user-defined fields. So I don't know. Let's go to employees. So here's ones that are already there, Adam, which we already have their anniversary date. Who knows? If I was going to create a new nice person, right? I know that's cheesy, but do I want to put in just a random text field? Is it going to be a date field, a drop down? Drop downs are nice because you keep the data consistent within the drop down. Yes, no, great, sometimes. And so not only can I visually see these fields on the oh, doesn't want the question mark, that's fine. In the system, right now that would be available on all employee records for us to fill out. So we create these user-defined fields, and wherever I create them, which I don't know why I clicked into jobs, but I already have some there too, they're accessible to fill out. I can include these settings from these user-defined fields on reports and lists. So they can be very useful, not just to stare at them, but actually use those on pulling data back out. Now I want to keep this to an hour. I'm going to follow up with people that had questions. There will be a recording sent out to anybody who participated or registered, and any input, you won't hurt my, well, you might hurt my feelings, but send them over to us, whether it's to me or just support at Foundation or sales at Foundation, the marketing. Me directly obviously would be great. Let me pull up my contact information for like, hey, we want more, we've seen this before, we want more information, I want to learn more about A, B, and C, because I'm not in your role, right? You guys are smarter than me, and I don't know what you want to know. So here's my contact info at the bottom, right there, Geff at foundationsoft.com. Yeah, so please reach out with anything I can do to help, even if it's something that you just need from our company that you're not sure who to reach out to. And if it's not me, I'll make sure the appropriate person gets back to you and hopefully makes you happy. So I appreciate it, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. I'll send this recording over to marketing, and that'll get sent out shortly. Thanks so much.